So we know the iPhone is out. There have been a ton of videos on it with the first impressions, the reviews that are way too early to actually make at this point, etc. Because the phone literally kind of just came out at this point. But I'm kind of making this video just in regards to like friends and family. Now, some of you guys and girls who've been sub for eons at this point are, I call friends and family, part of the community. But in reality, friends and family as well, because when a new phone is released, especially like one of the newer Pixels, because I'm part of Team Pixel, you know, I get asked questions and the iPhone, you know, every time. But this is a different one because the iPhone 12 wasn't seen as a huge upgrade if you're coming from the iPhone like 11 series. I'm still on the 11 Pro Max. I didn't think the 12 was good. So this is where I evaluated the 13 line and the 13 Pro Max to see if it is worth an upgrade. Because I even know some of my family was coming from like the X or the 10 and some even the 8 as well. I don't know how that phone is still running with how Apple nerfs their stuff. But that being said, I just kind of want to briefly talk about some stuff. Not necessarily do a review, but have a quick discussion and just talk about the new iPhone 13 line, but more specifically, some of the shady stuff Apple's kind of hiding in the base model 128 gigabyte version, which is very strange of these omissions. It's also kind of terrible as well. And just share my thoughts on some of this stuff. Let's talk about it. So I think one of the cool points about this, and once again, it kind of sucks it got to the price point that it is now, but they didn't raise the price. It's $10.99 for the base. Once again, I'm speaking more from the Pro Max series side of things, but the base of that is still 128 gigabytes. Well, you know, it's not 64, even though 64 is fine for me. It's still $10.99. So the price hasn't gone up, but it's sad the price for phones is that high, and it's our fault as the consumers that this happened. So that's our fault. But they didn't increase the price a ton on this. But they did new innovative things, and just my thoughts on some of this stuff here. We're just going to kind of list it and go down, but not really go too crazy with a lot of this stuff. That one being an attractive thing is the price, the same price, especially from 2 years ago, which is kind of cool as well. Now, they flaunted the new screen. Now, you have the smaller bezel at the front, because if you have the 13, you know, you have, you know, the wider bezel here. It's going in and out, whatever. But it's still negligible, in my opinion. It's still not that big of a deal. But it's the 120 hertz that Android phones, and have been doing for a while, iPhone finally catches up, gives us 120 hertz, which is, you know, great for animations and viewings and all these apps and gaming, unless, shady thing number one, if it's a third-party app, which is most of the apps that you're most likely going to be using, you are limited to 60 hertz. So essentially, you're not getting 120 hertz, which is very, very sad and very deceptive marketing. So you're not really going to enjoy a lot of that stuff yet. So that's probably in a future phone. You figure maybe if you have the Pro Max version, you get full capabilities of it, but... And obviously, a lot of the stuff that I'm known more to cover, and I don't cover phones as much, because a lot of phone stuff has become a little boring to me. It doesn't do well on the channel, but whenever there's a supplemental upgrade or something that I think is worthwhile of mentioning, why not talk about it? And they finally updated the cameras to an extent within this stuff as well, but some really cool stuff and some limiting stuff, as usual. So in regards to the physical cameras itself, it's still the same kind of array. You still got your three main lenses here, but your telephoto lens finally isn't awful. It's not cropping in as much. It's basically its own dedicated sensor at this point. So you're going to see much better, especially in lowly lit situations. It's going to work more like the lens should have. And once again, we're finally able to do that with this. The other big thing is they worked on their ultra wide as well. So not only is that improved a bit more, it's going to work with some of the newer things I'm going to talk about in a second as well. But the one thing they included was macro photography. I mean, you can put the camera, and I've seen a lot of this stuff already, and some of my friends and stuff have, you know, shown and said good things, but you could be really close up and actually use macro photography and almost basically get a 1-to-1 ratio from it. But the issue is it's automatic. Now, the cool thing is, though, is that you can also use it in video and stills. So it actually works in video mode. So that's a huge plus. But once again, it's all automated. You can't preset anything, etc. I think they mentioned somewhere that they're working on a manual option later on. So that way, maybe if you want to change things up or have a different kind of ratio, you could do that. But as of now, it's all automated. But It's promising to see. I don't even know if I'd ever use the macro for anything really serious, but it's definitely something fun, and I think it's something good that they added, because there's a lot of macro stuff out there. But if I were just to have the phone today, which I'm still waiting to see if I'm picking up, I don't know yet. I might give it a little bit more time until they work out some stuff. I'd go like to a brick wall or a stone so you can see the uber details, but nonetheless, pretty cool upgrade with something like that, and promise for the future. Now, if you're on the video side of things, once again, iPhone video stuff, it's cool and all. I think it's a little bit overplayed, honestly. But yet again, if you're into this kind of stuff, you might be impressed that there is a ProRes option, which has a ton of data in it. You can gather a ton of raw detail, etc. It's ProRes. It's something Mac users love, and you could throw it into a lot of editing software and get a lot out of it. 4K, which is huge for a lot of people. These phones shoot 4K now. They've been for a little bit. 30 frames a second. Unless, point number 2, shady marketing, you have the basic gig, 128 gigabyte model that can only do 1080p. So just because you want the base model and you're not spending a little bit more, Apple caps you for being so cheap for them. So while that is lame in itself, there's also a newer mode coming out for your shooting. Cinema mode or cinematic mode. It's an over-glorified, automated, mathematical, in-camera rack focusing type thing. It's kind of described as like dual pixel to an extent, but it knows rack focus. So like if I'm here and like I kind of duck my head out, it would take something more primary, and you could kind of do its own rack focus without touching it. I mean, it still has like touch the zoom and stuff like that, or touch the focus. But it's all automated. Now, from an actual professional standpoint, it's not what you want. You want to be able to do that. Now, if you could set key points, I think that'd be phenomenal. But while I think it is kind of gimmicky, is a bit amateurish, it does work decently well, even though it does stutter. And especially if you're around someone with like maybe strands of hair or flyaway hairs, you see a little bit of the haloing, the blur that happens when it's trying to create that separation, that kind of fake bokeh. I just think it means that there is more promise for stuff like this in the future. But if you could set those kind of the key points to track multiple focus things as you go along, or to, do predetermined stuff, even more automated, especially if you get timing or certain block points and stuff like that, you'd rather bring up something even more interesting and stuff like that. So even maybe a need for sliders is, still kind of not as much as well. But that's just kind of my thoughts about a lot of the new iPhone stuff, the iPhone 13 series. Once again, I'm an iPhone 11 Pro Max user. I skipped last because I think the iPhone 12 line didn't have much for me. It didn't really offer basically anything. But now people are saying, well, of course, the iPhone 13 line is the iPhone 12 with slight buffs. Of course. But there are a lot of people who also didn't get the iPhone 12. But the iPhone 13 finally brings something more into the line with these new macro modes and the cinema mode and all that kind of stuff, cinematic mode. There's promise for the future and what they can do building into more of their iOS 15 and whatever they got going forward. Now, will the iPhone 14 expand upon it more? Most likely. But yet again, some of the shady stuff like the limiting of the ProRes or cinematic mode and all that kind of stuff sucks. But to be honest, I'm not really shooting anything 4K. I don't care, but it's something that you should know. In regards to the battery life, I spoke to a couple of friends and family who already upgraded the phone as well. And of course, it's better. Of course, it's definitely going to be better than my current phone because it's already starting to get nerfed by the Apple updates, iOS updates. They slow their phones down, self-admitted, and should be illegal as hell and unethical. But of course, you can't sue them for it because we keep buying this crap anyway. But that being said, the battery life is going to be good for a little while, for 6 months, and then it's going to start going downhill a little bit because that's the way of life. But I think it's a cool little upgrade. I think from the 11 series down, there's something to look for here. So that is my thoughts to friends and family in a more long-winded format, but without breaking down spec by spec necessarily and going into... It's cool.